We will hold on to that cloud as we move into the overnight period. Again, some bits of drizzle are possible generally across western locations. Meanwhile, that frontal feature will gradually push its way to the north across the Highlands before this second area begins to move in across Scotland in the early hours of Tuesday morning. Underneath that cloud, temperatures are not going to be falling too far at all. Some of us might actually hold up in double digits in places, just a bit cooler across the far north of Scotland where we've got a few more breaks in that cloud. Tuesday then looks to be another cloudy day for the vast majority. We've got that rain gradually shifting northwards across Scotland. This will be accompanied by a freshening breeze, particularly in the north and west. Winds staying lighter further to the south and east, but again, temperatures in that southwesterly airflow are going to be well above average for the time of year. Once again, 12, 13 degrees certainly possible. We could still see the likes of 14 degrees in places. As we move throughout the rest of the week, it will turn brighter for some of us, but we will also see those temperatures dropping off a bit more, closer to average for the time of year, but some chillier nights as well. Enjoy your day.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's back to school for MPs. Yes, the House of Commons returns from recess, but it hasn't been a quiet one. Big questions over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Will Rishi Sunak bring a deal to Parliament this week? Or might he face an enormous rebellion, perhaps led by none other than Boris Johnson? There's a lot of political intrigue behind it, and we'll be exploring it all this morning after the headlines.
Good morning, it's 9:30. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom with the headlines. The partner of missing mother of two, Nicola Bulley, has spoken of the family's agony after a body was found yesterday in the river near to where she went missing. Lancashire police are working to provide a formal identification of the body, which was found in the water around a mile from where Nicola was last seen 3 weeks ago. They're currently treating the death as unexplained. Peter Faulding, who led a private search of the river for Nicola, says he still did not believe she drowned.
If Nicola had fallen in the play at the bench where the phone was found, she would have landed in 2 feet of water. She would not have drowned at that location. I don't believe Nicola went in because the police divers searched that area thoroughly that afternoon, and drowning victims go to the bottom. She could not have made it over the weir in a day. There's no way, and that my whole team and other police have looked at this. It baffled me.
More than 11,000 healthcare workers from the GMB and Unite unions in England and Wales are walking out today in their continuing dispute over pay and staffing. The workers striking include ambulance workers, paramedics and call handlers. GMB says it's over a month since the government engaged in meaningful dialogue. Number 10 has denied reports that the Prime Minister has been forced to delay an announcement over the Northern Ireland Protocol amid backlash from his own MPs. Talks between the government and the European Union are ongoing to try and break the impasse over the contentious post-Brexit trading deal. The DUP says it won't support an arrangement, which means the European Court of Justice maintains oversight. German language movie All Quiet on the Western Front broke a BAFTA's record last night, winning 7 awards, the most ever by a foreign film. The World War I epic took home awards for Best Film and Best Director. Elvis star Austin Butler won the BAFTA for the Best Leading Actor, beating Colin Farrell, who'd been the favourite to take the prize for his role in The Banshees of Inisherin. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Tom Harwood.
A very good morning to you. It's 9:33 and this is The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, on your TV and your radio. Now, the top story today, of course, is what Lancashire police have now confirmed. They've recovered a body from the River Wyre, just a mile away from where Nicola Bulley disappeared last month. The family of the mum of two say they are braced for the worst possible news and are incredibly heartbroken. Nicola has, of course, been missing since January the 27th, when she was last seen walking her dog along the River Wyre. Let's now cross to our reporter, Sophie Reaper, who has more live from the scene. Sophie, what's the latest?
Well, a very good morning to you, Tom. Yes, it was yesterday afternoon that we heard from Lancashire Police that a body had indeed been recovered as part of the investigation to find Nicola Bulley. Now, it hasn't been formally identified as the mother of two yet. We're waiting for an update from Lancashire Police one way or another. Now, this morning, I'm very close to the place where it's believed Nicola was last seen. We know that that morning, Friday the 27th of January, she dropped her two children off at school, and then leaving the car there, she walked with her dog Willow along the path behind me, across this bridge, down this way and towards the upper field where the last confirmed sighting of her took place. Now, yesterday in a statement, Lancashire Police said no formal identification has yet been carried out, so we're unable that this is Nicola Bulley at this time. Procedures to identify the body are ongoing. We are currently treating the death as unexplained. Now, to reiterate, we don't know yet whether the body found was Nicola Bulley, but her family were updated on the latest development. And as you said a moment ago, Tom, they are bracing for the worst. This, of course, is an agonising wait for them. And as we all wait for updates from Lancashire Police, we're going to be bringing you those updates as we get them throughout the next few days.
Well, Sophie, thank you for staying across this story for us. We'll, of course, be coming back to you with any further developments. But back now to Westminster, because today is, of course, that first day back from recess for MPs. Not that it's been a particularly quiet recess. Well, the House of Commons will sit from 2:30 this afternoon, kicking off with levelling up questions. But perhaps the biggest political stories are not currently in the corridors of Parliament. Rather, they rest in Belfast and in Brussels. Yes, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, is considering whether or not to push ahead with a new protocol deal, even if the DUP aren't on board with it. And that's not all. Amid the negotiations, the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has waded in, saying it would be a great mistake to drop the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. That's according to a source close to the former PM. Now, the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, which the Commons passed, but it still needs to go through the Lords, it would allow the government to make unilateral changes to the operation of the protocol. And the EU don't like it. There's suggestion that this bill might be dropped, but of course, Boris Johnson is saying that we need to stick at it. It's a rare intervention from Boris Johnson on this subject, but let's listen to what the leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, had to say about this yesterday on GB News.
It's not completely unhelpful. I think it's a
so
reminder.
You welcome it, then?
I think, you know, it's helpful to remind the EU that we have the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. It's helpful to remind them what those expectations are. But I would also just say that, look, there are encouraging signs. There is people are saying there's a lot more to do, but progress is being made.
Well, that's the leader of the House, Penny Mordaunt, speaking yesterday. Well, let's try and make sense of this now. I'm joined by Dr. Richard Johnson, Professor of Politics and International Relations at Queen Mary University, London. Richard, first of all, it sounds incredibly complicated, talking about the protocol, a potential new deal on the protocol, and the protocol bill. Now, these are three different things. Just in a nutshell, what is this protocol bill?
So, well, in order to understand the protocol bill, we need to understand the protocol. And the protocol was part of the withdrawal agreement that Boris Johnson got through at the end of in 2020. And what that has said, or what that has done, is it's allowed the European Court of Justice to be the final arbiter when there are concerns about the violation of single market rules within Northern Ireland, because Northern Ireland's been kept within the single market of the EU. And the argument is this is quite unusual, that normally a sovereign state would have, if there were disagreements that would go through international arbitration, it wouldn't be the court of just one of those partners, right? And so the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill is saying that we wish to disapply that part of the initial withdrawal agreement.
And it's controversial because it's unilateral. It would be some sort of nuclear option that the EU really would not take kindly to. But I suppose the argument of Boris Johnson and his allies, and indeed Liz Truss, who introduced the protocol bill as Foreign Secretary, is that having this on the table, not necessarily deploying it, but saying it's there and we could push this button if you do not play ball with us, that's a good negotiating, that's a strong negotiating position. Why would it be that Rishi Sunak is thinking of taking it off the table?
I think it depends perhaps on what's been said internally, and it's difficult to read some of these tea leaves. But you're right to say that, you know, this is in effect the UK government acknowledging the unusual nature of having this effectively now foreign court overseeing a certain part of the United Kingdom. And also, I think, if we look at, say, the Good Friday Agreement, the Belfast Agreement, a core part of that was cross-community consent. And the issue, I think, that's always been with the protocol is the unionist community never really consented to this. And so part of this is, in a way, I think the UK government saying, look, we're trying to fashion some kind of arrangement that allows the unionist community to feel that they have a kind of escape clause, if necessary.
Well, let's cross now live to Belfast, where we can join by Doogie Beattie, our Northern Ireland reporter. Because, Doogie, it is fascinating to see the reaction of the DUP to those quick talks that we saw on Friday. Potentially what the Prime Minister thought was further advanced might not be so.
Well, it all, as your guest has already said, it all is around the ECJ. It basically means that we have no MEPs in Northern Ireland. So any laws that are made that we don't like here or we're diverting from inside Northern Ireland, we have no way of addressing that. So democracy in that side of things has gone. And of course, nationalist politicians here can use their sister parties and their own parties, the likes of Sinn Féin, who is actually in power here and also in the Republic of Ireland, to use their MEPs to sort of try to change those laws or move around them inside Europe. So basically, Northern Ireland, for unionists, have become a colony. It's been annexed. But it's been done in such a way that this is a trade deal. And people keep on saying this is a brilliant deal, it's a great deal. It's not a good deal for Northern Ireland, because what it is a way of the EU protecting the single market. It's all about money.
And Doogie, just to bring this down to sort of real everyday bread and butter issues, the single market rules aren't just about trading between countries. They're also about things like state aid. So the energy subsidy that everyone's getting, sort of lots and lots of money off their bills in Scotland, Wales and in England, it has to be done differently in Northern Ireland because the EU doesn't allow such a comprehensive scheme. It's issues like that that really affect the everyday lives of people.
Totally correct, it is. And I mean, there's 3 ships meant to be coming to Belfast to be partially built here. There's 25% tariffs on British steel. How will that affect? If there's any subsidies put to that shipyard, how will that affect? Things like single farm payment could at some stage be looked at as state aid. All pharmaceuticals, the massive amount of pharmaceuticals now not in Northern Ireland because they're not licensed through the EU. All these things have to be looked at. And of course, the benefits of Northern Ireland, and it has always been the biggest benefit, is that it was part of the 6th largest economy in the world, i.e. the UK. Now it's been dragged out of that and very much put into EU. So it's about economic alignment with the Republic of Ireland. So it's neither has an advantage. And where you get economic alignment, you will surely get political alignment following it. And that's where unionism is saying, no, that cannot happen.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see what the details of this purported deal. The Prime Minister, of course, saying this hasn't yet been finalised. There may well be further to move. But for now, Doogie Beattie, thanks for joining us. And turning back to the issues of how the politics of this country is working. It's not just issues in Northern Ireland, of course, but Scotland too. The SNP's leadership contest is rolling on for another day. There are 4 days remaining in this leadership contest for people to declare their candidacy. Already, 2 have. Now, 2 of those individuals are Ash Regan. She was a minister under Sturgeon who resigned over that gender reform bill. She voted against it. She is now declaring herself as a candidate in the race. The other, Humza Yousaf, the current Health Secretary in Scotland, although he has been under a lot of criticism over how the NHS in Scotland has been performing over this last winter. Let's return to Richard Johnson now. This race is really hotting up, and there seems to be a great deal of ideological diversity within the SNP, perhaps more than people thought.
That's right. And, you know, the SNP used to be known as the Tartan Tories. Right? They were seen as a more conservative, socially conservative movement. And what changed really in the last decade in particular was that they started to win these Labour seats in the middle of Scotland, and that sort of changed the type of MSP and the MPs that were being elected. But there is still that kind of core heritage of being a more conservative movement. In many ways, Alex Salmond, the previous First Minister, sort of represented that side of it. And I think Nicola Sturgeon has been able to kind of mostly keep a lid on that, although I think some of those divisions were already boiling up and partly explain her departure. And I think we're going to see in this leadership contest some of those divisions come to the fore again.
It's interesting because we're looking at potentially 4 major candidates now for this position. We've mentioned Ash Regan and Anna Sarwar. Now, they're 2 opposite sides of the party, really. Ash, someone who resigned over that gender reform bill, seen as more socially conservative. Anna Sarwar, seen as more socially liberal. But also we've got Angus Robertson and Kate Forbes. Now, Kate Forbes had the good fortune, perhaps, of being on maternity leave during all of this, but she abstained by virtue of that on the gender bill. She seemed to be more critical of it. She's an evangelical Christian. She's made anti-abortion comments in the past. This is someone who perhaps is on that socially conservative side as well. Whereas Angus Robertson, someone perhaps closer to the Sturgeon worldview. Are we really seeing in these 4 candidates now 2 social liberals and 2 social conservatives?
That seems to be where some of the division is coming about. And, you know, it's possible that we could be slightly overstating some of this. But this particular gender recognition bill has really exposed some of those issues. And whatever one may think about the particular issue at hand, I think that what it did show was that when the UK government, both on this question and also on the question of independence referendum, stood up and said no, actually made a case for the UK, support for the UK and Scotland went up. And I think this has been a terrible error of devolutionists in the round, is the sense of, well, the way that we stand up for the UK is for the UK to take a step back. And that is what Vernon Bogdanor calls devolving and forgetting. But we mustn't. The UK government should be active and part of life in Scotland.
Yes, and I think that's why it's important for us to discuss these issues, although they only affect one part of the United Kingdom. Of course, there are knock-on implications for everyone right across the land. I think I should make a correction. I think I said the words Anna Sarwar when I meant Hamza Yousaf just there in the last... He's, of course, the Health Secretary, and there is the Labour Party leader in Scotland. But just in the round now, in terms of what this election campaign will look like, we've seen, of course, in the Conservative Party, a very fractious campaign over the last summer really affected the poll ratings of that party. Blue on blue hurt the Tory cause. Similarly, in 2015, the Labour Party leadership election, it was very introspective, very internal, talking to itself. There was indeed a lot of red on red. Might we now in Scotland be seeing some yellow on yellow?
I think definitely. You know, Nicola Sturgeon, even though her popularity dipped a bit, remained the most significant and popular figure in Scottish politics. And because of that, she was able to kind of hold this coalition together. There doesn't seem to be the same kind of cross-party loyalty to any of the single candidates. And that is a risk. That means that perhaps some people who don't care so much about independence might move back to Labour. It might mean that some people who really care about independence might move to the Alba Party, led by Alex Salmond, if they don't like the sense that it's being led by a social liberal or what have you. And that, I think, particularly in the first past the post context of a Westminster election, could be very serious for the SNP. And we could see the independence vote actually split between the SNP and Alba, and Labour could come through the middle in many of these seats.
And a very interesting poll just out in the last couple of days showing that the Labour Party has really soared in those polls, very close to where the SNP is, now just a couple of points behind. The Labour Party held their conference in Scotland over the weekend. Finally in this conversation, is the Scottish Labour Party on the cusp now of a pretty remarkable resurgence?
I think it's quite possible. I mean, the Scottish politics has been incredibly volatile in the last few elections, and we saw the SNP sweep the board in 2015, but then they lost, you know, nearly a couple of dozen seats in 2017, then they won most of those back in 2019, and so that, I think, sets the framework for another shift in a different direction, this time towards Labour.
Well, Richard Johnson, thank you so much for talking us through those huge, huge issues. But there's another big row brewing, lots of rows this morning. This one around Tories and tax. This is, of course, in the lead-up to the budget on the 15th of March. The Prime Minister is facing pressure from his own backbenchers to avoid raising corporation tax. Now, Liam Halligan has been following this story for weeks, and he joins me now. And, Liam, this was the big argument of the summer. Liz Truss was saying we shouldn't raise corporation tax. Rishi Sunak was saying we should. This row hasn't gone away.
It hasn't. This stems back to last spring, Tom, when Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor before the Chancellor before the Chancellor. He legislated in his then spring budget 2022 to raise corporation tax from 19%, which is very competitive by international standards, to 25%, which the way our allowances work, frankly, isn't very competitive. That would send us from like 5th in the OECD division of tax competitiveness to 30th. We don't need that at this point, in my view. We need to be attracting investment. So, of course, Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, they wanted to reverse that increase from 19 to 25%. And then Jeremy Hunt came along and reversed the reversal. So we are going up from 19 to 25%
of course,
in April 2023.
The OBR says that this would raise around £20 billion a year. That's not to be sniffed at.
They say it's 18 billion, and a lot of people, including myself, think that that's wrong. If you look at how completely skew-whiff OBR forecasts have been on corporation tax over the last few years, huge differences in what they predict and what actually happens. I would say that if we keep corporation tax where it is, many businesses that would otherwise go bust, would otherwise fail to survive, will actually keep on going and therefore generate more tax revenue. I actually think raising corporation tax to 25% will cost the Treasury money. But far more importantly, a lot of business leaders and Conservative backbenchers now agreeing with me. I've been writing this in my Telegraph column literally for months, putting forward the figures. And some of those figures have now been used in this letter, which an organisation, a centre-right policy group called the Centre for Brexit Policy have put forward. And they've got the support now of the Telegraph newspaper, the Daily Mail newspaper over the weekend when this news of this letter emerged. And quite frankly, Rishi Sunak's got a problem because you've got a lot of people from across the party on the backbenches. You know, the ERG, the European Research Group, you've got the Conservative Growth Forum, which is like a group of people who don't want Liz Truss to be leader but agreed with a lot of what she was trying to do. John Redwood from the No Turning Back group. I would say at least 60 or 70 Tory MPs are in the membership of these various groups that have signed this letter. And you know, Tom, do the parliamentary maths. That means Rishi Sunak won't be able to get his finance bill that implements the budget legislation through if these Tories decide to really make a stand here. And it does strike me as odd. We spent billions and billions of pounds keeping particularly small and medium-sized companies going during lockdown. They're now facing massive energy bills. They're going to go up again in April, by the way, when government support for corporate energy bills is taken away. And raising their corporation tax, taking 6% off their margin, it is a tax on profits, but a lot of those profits are reinvested and it's all about cash flow. So it strikes me that Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, who, by the way, when he stood to be Tory leader, wanted a 15% rate of corporation tax. When he stood to be leader before that, he wanted a 12.5% rate of corporation tax. He now wants a 25% rate of corporation tax because, frankly, in my view, it's a personal view, he's listening to Treasury economists who don't properly forecast the economy. Again, that is my
It is
view.
interesting looking at the counterfactuals because we're seeing some investment decisions now, some real-world investment decisions of companies choosing where to base future operations, where to base new headquarters and the like. And they're looking between, for example, the Republic of Ireland, which has half the level of corporation tax now, or will do after April, to the United Kingdom. Is it any wonder that sort of the big businesses of this world are basing themselves out of Dublin rather than London?
Well, as you say, AstraZeneca, the pharmaceutical giant, has decided to put a new headquarters in Dublin, a 12.5% rate of corporation tax. We'll see how long the EU accept that 12.5% of corporation tax, by the way. But for now, that's what it is in Ireland. And you know, fair play to the Irish. It means they've got a massive amount of foreign direct investment over many years, huge numbers of jobs, taking advantage of Ireland's superb workforce, highly educated, young, energetic workforce, as you know, Tom, and that much lower rate of corporation tax. And this AstraZeneca decision has really focused minds. But it isn't just big business, OK? Yeah. If you run a small company, you know, that employs 10 or 15 people, you're going to be paying a lot of corporation tax. And at a time when margins, particularly for manufacturers, are so tight, if you take 6% off that margin, you are threatening the viability of the business.
It's one that will roll and roll until that budget next month. We'll keep an eye on it. That's all we have time for today. Thank you to Liam, Richard Johnson as well. Up next is the weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry, here with your latest weather updates from the Met Office. Most of us are starting off the new week on a particularly cloudy note, with our winds coming up from a southwesterly direction that's feeding in quite a lot of moisture from the Atlantic, helping to create that cloud. We've also got a couple of weather fronts that are bringing some slightly more extensive rain in places. This first one, particularly across parts of Scotland, will be fairly slow moving throughout the day. The second one bringing more patchy outbreaks of drizzle for Northern Ireland, northwest England, and some also possible for areas of Wales as well. There might be a few breaks in that cloud across central, southeastern areas of England, but most of us are going to pretty much see cloudy skies throughout the day. Temperatures, though, in that southwesterly wind flow are particularly mild for the time of